Hi, it's David Ostriker here in sunny Karmiel. Behind me is an orange tree that I really like. I see it from my desk when I'm working each day, and I thought I should give it a little bit of a plug, this orange tree, this week. This week's Parsha is Parsha VAYECHI. VAYECHI is the final Parsha in the book of Bereshit, of Genesis. Genesis is a book that begins with creation and goes through the lives of the Avos and Imanos, of the fathers and the mothers of the Jewish nation. Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. And what's curious about it is they all pass away in this Parsha, and so does one other person, Yosef. Now, he's not really one of the Avos. He's the next generation. And in the book of Shmos, Yaakov dies again. That kind of tells us that Yaakov has two roles. He's both one of the tribes, one of the 12 tribes, right? He's one of the sons, principal sons of Yaakov. No, sounds like motorcycles down the street. And his other role is he really is one of the Avos, because his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, actually each become one of the tribes. So there's a dichotomy, and this is emphasized actually in the fact that Yaakov dies both in the book of Genesis, Bereshit, and Shmos, Exodus, which is a book in which tells the story of the lives of, well, we know the enslavement, but also of the sons, the tribes. In this Parsha, we have the death of Yaakov, and I want to put one note in for you to look at carefully. The way Yaakov talks to his son Yosef is strange. Yaakov knows that Joseph has something on him, and that is, Joseph will decide what happens with Yaakov's body after he passes on. And he's begging Yaakov, don't do to me what I was forced to do to your mother, Rachel, who is not buried in the Machpelah. Please bury me there. And he doesn't address him like a father addresses a son, giving a command. And by the way, Yaakov is about to give commands to all of his children in this Parsha, his final blessings to them. But when he talks to Joseph, he's very, very careful in his words. This is the same Joseph that we've talked about before. Now, I want to talk about one very specific and interesting portion of it. Joseph brings his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, to his father for a blessing. And his father says he's going to bless him. He's quite old, right? And he says, bring them to me. And Yosef brings them to him, and he's about to bless them, and he's going to bless them simultaneously, it seems. It's a little unclear what's going on. And he puts his hands on his son, the sons, like this, putting his right hand, in this case this is my right hand, although it's camera left, putting his right hand on the head of the younger son, Ephraim, and his left hand on the older son, Manasseh. Well, you know what the history of this kind of behavior has been. It cost him Joseph, among other things, Yaakov. And Joseph goes to untangle the hands and put them this way. And Yaakov knows exactly what he's doing, and again he crosses his hands. It seems he's giving the younger son his right hand, which is more important than his left hand. But what is he doing? Rav Dressler tells us, others tell us, something very interesting. He could have just asked the boys to switch and then put his hands this way, but he didn't. He was giving his right hand, his fine motor ability, things like that, to Ephraim. Right? But he was giving his right side, the power of his right side to Manasseh. How does this play out later? In every census that's taken of the Jewish people, when they're in the Midbar, in the desert, and the tribes are recounted, Ephraim always comes before Manasseh when we're counting. And by the way, Ephraim was a bigger tribe as well. Except for one time. Just one time. As they stand on the river bank, prior to crossing into the land, Manasseh is counted first. So this is a very important hint. It tells us that the student, the author, the reader of Ephraim, right, is tremendously important when we're in exile. The whole time in the Midbar, they were, in a sense, still in exile. They hadn't come into the land. The whole time they were in Egypt, they were certainly in exile. Right? During this time, Torah study sustains us. Learning the Koel, the Beis Medrash, that's what sustains the Jewish people. And it's very important. When they were going to exile, we're told that Yehuda went before them to set up a yeshiva. We're told that yeshivas existed in Babylon because the elite had been taken to Babylon first, so that once they got to Babylon, they could immediately continue their learning there. Yeah. So the learning quality of Ephraim, who spent his days with Yaakov in Yaakov's last days, are tremendously important. Right? But when it comes to crossing the river and settling your land, building your land, right, then the right side of Manasseh takes the lead. This was what Yaakov understood. And so he gave the nation builder, Manasseh, the right side for when the time comes that they would cross into the land. Because when you cross into the land, it's a mitzvah to build a bridge, to make a road, to build a home. Right? Life in Israel by itself is a mitzvah. Right? The settling of the land is a huge mitzvah. And consequently, Manasseh takes a precedent at that moment as they're about to cross into the land. Because now is a time not to sit in Koel, not to sit in yeshiva, but you're going to be with Joshua, you're going to have to fight for the land. And then you're going to have to build institutions, cities, governments, councils. You're going to have to create currencies. You're going to have to create an army, right? These are all things that are part of the land and not part of Koel. And that's why Manasseh is counted first only the moment before they enter the land. Give it some thought. David Ostriker, here in Karmiel, Parsha VAYECHI. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.